Hello, good morning and welcome to NileFM. It's Monday, January 15th. Thank you very much for being here with us. And we're very happy to have in the studio as a guest this morning one of the founders of the Helm Foundation, Amena El Saie, who is with us today. And welcome along to the program.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for being with us, Amena.
Thank you.
Now, Amena, this is an amazing initiative, the Helm Foundation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it, what it is and how long, it's been around for?
Okay, so Helm Foundation started about 3.5 years ago, formally as a nonprofit. Before that, we were just two friends from childhood friends, Ramez Meher and I, and we were working in a training company. And we happened to have a normal conversation about, how I went to Germany and experienced being blind for 2 hours. Basically, it's called the Dialogue Museum.
Right.
And it was an incredible experience. I was studying there for a semester, and it was a field trip, and it was incredible. I basically went in as a blind person, never saw my guide, and just went into a boat, went into a market, crossed the street, and it was just amazing. And I thought I really wanted to do this back in Egypt so people would understand how persons with disabilities feel. And Ramez also had an encounter in university. We were studying in the American University, and he had a friend who was sitting next to him. And it was a very small encounter that made him think of it. It was basically, he just, in the middle of the classroom, he bent over and said, Ramez, what is going on in the classroom? Everybody was doing their presentations, but nobody made their presentation with sound. So basically what Ramez did was he added a voiceover to his presentation, and then he could understand what's going on. So it's very simple things that you can do to include persons with disabilities, and that was it. That was the start.
So this is what your initiative is to, because I guess Egypt and Cairo especially is not the most friendly place towards persons with disability, is it? It's not an easy place to get around. There's not a lot of help. So where do you start with a project as big as this?
Well, it was a long journey, and the bottom line is basically it's our role. Every single person needs to make accommodations to any building, to any service, anything that we provide. There's 15 million persons with disabilities, around 15 million persons living in Egypt alone. That's aside from tourists with disabilities, who are about 1 billion persons with disabilities around the world. So when we approach the problem, we see it as an opportunity. If you think about it, any shop, any place, all of us have grandparents, have parents who are growing old. We're going to get old. So, yes, Cairo is very difficult. And this is where we started to find out what is the root cause of the problem, which is basically accessibility.
Okay. So, Helm, the obviously it means dream in Arabic. Was there a story behind that? Or, I mean, what made you go for that particular name for the foundation? Because I think it's beautiful. You know what I mean? Just, it's something it is something to aspire to ultimately, isn't it?
I think basically that's it. You just said it.
Is that what it is? Okay.
I think it's spot on, because it's basically a big dream. I think it's I mean, the one thing that I would love to see before I die is to see this dream come to life. And I don't think it's ever going to be done, because if you think about it, there's always ways to make things and life easier for people.
Yeah.
To give you a small example, the remote control. So everybody uses remote controls for TVs, right? That was initially made for people who have mobility issues because they couldn't get out of their chair.
Not just for really lazy people who don't want to get up to change the channel.
Exactly. So exactly, you got it. So if you think about it, when you design for all, when you design for people with disabilities, you eventually design for everyone. So this is why we call it universal design. Because when you actually make room and you think of everybody when you're designing anything, you're thinking of everybody, so you don't leave anyone behind.
So let's talk about accessibility a little bit, because when you go to Europe, there are 1,000,001 regulations and stuff that buildings will have, especially for the public and stuff, so that people, persons with disabilities, can get around and stuff. Where do you start here, because that's not cheap to do. I mean, making things accessible is expensive. It's expensive to businesses. It's expensive to the public and stuff. So how do you start to make things more accessible or change the mindset, I guess?
Yeah. So when we started the first project, we basically started with employment, because we have a law in Egypt that says that any company that has more than 50 employees has to abide by a 5% quota to hire persons with disabilities. So
that is a law.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's really
that was our entry point to the market, basically. So that was really useful, because what happened is all the companies have to do it. They either pay money and they hire the people with disabilities and they don't make use of their talents, or they just don't have a job. So that was our entry point to accessibility. That's when we realized that it is not so expensive if you start from the beginning. So if you're building a building from the very beginning, a metro station, anything, if you design it properly, you don't pay almost anything extra, because you make the design properly. If you have to make accommodations, that's when it becomes a little bit expensive. But yet, you don't have to make all of the changes, because not all people with disabilities are wheelchair users.
Yeah.
We call it reasonable accommodations. And this is our role. We help companies and the government to understand how to make the right changes and the priorities to do these changes.
Okay, well, I mean, I have to ask. I mean, for someone who's listening who does not live with any kind of disability, what are some of the most pressing challenges? I mean, obviously, you said getting around and getting into buildings, but I mean, what other kinds of challenges do persons with disabilities face? Obviously, here in Egypt and around the world as well. For someone who does not or can't really understand the scope of it, you know what I mean?
Okay, so I think we can start with what are the types of disabilities. Basically, people who are blind or have visual impairments, people with physical disabilities, they could use crutches, they could have a hand impairment, they could be wheelchair users. There are people with intellectual disabilities who sometimes could have other physical implications as well, and hearing impairments. So if you think about them, each of them have different accommodations. And what normally happens is people are they're not bad people, but people don't really understand what they don't know. So sometimes they would back off, or they would be they would have some fears about how to deal with them, so they would avoid them, or they feel it could be a hassle. I mean, if I would tell you right now, I'm going to bring you someone who's blind to work here in the radio station, you would be like, okay, so what do I need to do to make sure this person is accommodated, and what are the costs that come with it?
Yeah.
So that's basically what we do. For example, people who are wheelchair users obviously would need ramps or elevators or wide doors. People who have hand impairments, you might want to make sure the doorknob is not round so that they can hold it. It would be straight, or they can put their hand and
hook it
exactly.
open it that way.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Very, very minor changes. If we're sitting at a table, a desk, or in a restaurant, you might need the table to have enough space or room under the table so that the wheelchair users can actually sit comfortably and be able to eat or do whatever the task is around the area.
Without feeling like they're in the way or something, or having people bump into them and making it an uncomfortable experience for themselves as well.
Yeah. Well, let's come back and we'll talk some more about some of the experiences that persons with disability might have around Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us, Amena. It's wonderful to have you on from the Helm Foundation. And if you have any questions that you want to ask, or perhaps you have an experience that you'd like to share yourself, and please do get in touch, of course. Yeah. This is NileFM Monday's morning show, and we are joined from the Helm Foundation by Amena, who is here with us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Amena. Now, we're talking about what it is like to live as a person with disabilities.
Yeah, like in Cairo, going around, how are people treated? Is there some way of making people treat people be more friendly or anything like that? Is that something that you work with?
That is exactly our focus. We try not just to focus on physical accessibility, but also help people understand disability and how to help each person. So if you would go on our Facebook page, Helm Egypt, you would find videos of how you can help persons with disabilities if you see them in the street, if they want to cross the street. That's actually one of the main problems that happens is people would avoid people with disabilities, they would look too much, or they would assume that you would have to talk talk to their caretaker instead of them, or people with them.
Sort of ignore them and treat them like they're not there, sort of thing,
exactly,
themselves.
exactly. So there are a lot of problems that we encounter every day with persons with disabilities, and what would hurt their feelings or make them feel that they're inferior. So this is our role. We create campaigns so that people would understand how to deal with persons with disabilities. Of course, ultimately, we should have in our schooling systems, it should be completely inclusive, because that means people and children, since they're, being brought up, they would understand that persons with disabilities are exactly the same. They just have different needs or different abilities, but they are people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, another way to sort of raise awareness is obviously campaigns and that sort of thing. And you have been doing a campaign to raise awareness and money, I believe, to help with accessibility for persons with disabilities, correct?
Correct. So we have actually made our biggest campaign to date, which is الحركة بكليك, or click for to move.
Yeah.
And basically we reached organically about more than 10 million viewers and people who shared our campaign online. Of course, we are very grateful to, of course, our sponsors and our team and everybody. And of course, Minna Shalabi and Ahmed Malik starred the ad, and Amri Salema directed it. So actually, it's been very effective.
And you can see that right now on NileFM.com. If you go to our website, you can see it on there.
Yeah.
And there's also an article you can see on our Twitter page and Facebook page at the moment. You can go and click through and have a look.
Yeah, I would recommend everybody to see it so that people would understand the struggles that you were saying. From the moment people with disabilities would wake up, they leave the house, they need a pavement, they need an accessible transportation system to get to wherever they want, they need an accessible workplace or a place to go. So we try to give a 360 solution, and we try to help. We have different arms, so we actually founded another consultancy, Helm Consultancy, to help corporates and businesses to have a solution when they want to make their business accessible and hire people with disabilities as well.
So this is part of your... Sorry, Sally.
No, go ahead.
It's part of your 360 approach. So you're trying to cover all the bases, basically.
Exactly.
All right, cool. And so you've said you've been around for 3 years, right? What have you managed to accomplish in those 3 years, then I have to ask?
Okay, so we have managed to, first of all, train a lot of people with disabilities. So with the foundation, we tried to train as many people quality-wise on how to be able to behave in the workplace. So if you imagine any person normally would fight for their dream job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to try to get the job they want. But if you imagine persons with disabilities, if you have very poor access to the basic education level, that's when you start having a problem, because you have less capabilities to compete in the job market. That's the gap we fill. So when people say, do you help hire them? First of all, we start to work on their capabilities so that we make them more hireable. And then we also work with the companies, as I said, to help them accommodate their needs. And also we help them make their premises more accessible so that they would, and train the people within the company on how to deal with persons with disabilities.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have the seminars.
Seminars and very creative community days. So remember the activity I told you about how I experienced being blind for 2 hours? We actually put people in, for example, if we work with a multinational company, we would put the employees in the same position as we would. So we have all these tens of different activities, and on the day we would have half of the people with disabilities and half without. So people would actually interact together. It's like a team building exercises. And
that's great. That's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. And I know in Europe they have also these restaurants as well, where you're able to experience what it is to dine if you are visually impaired or if you're blind, and you have blind waiters and everything. And from the moment you enter, you're completely immersed in darkness, and it is one of the most eye-opening experiences for someone who doesn't live with that sort of thing. And so we can definitely hope for more experiences and more integration like that in the future. And I believe there's something happening, or it's something that you managed to implement in Cairo University, correct?
Yes. So basically, the campaign that we just launched, we actually got to collect about 4 million Egyptian pounds in kind and in cash to help implement the second phase of around Cairo University. So we are trying to make different models in different cities to show different stakeholders how to implement accessibility and to show the reaction of persons with disabilities to these models. So we created about 2 kilometers around Cairo University that are fully accessible for people with physical disabilities, and also visually impaired people. So we created the first tactile blocks. So they're basically like tiles that are a little bit elevated, and you'll see them in the campaign video. And basically, blind people can use their white cane, which is a stick that helps them not, get into the street without knowing.
Yeah.
And then, so these blocks would help people know where to go and not fall into a little hole or
anything like that might trip them over. Or,
exactly.
How do persons with disabilities, whether they be blind or have different disabilities, how do they react when you're doing these things and you're showing them like there's the greater accessibility? What difference does it make to their lives?
So basically, persons with disabilities need, just as I said, they're human. So in the end of the day, if you think about it, they need everything that we do. So they need, for example, if somebody is quadriplegic and they need a tool to eat, right? So a lot of people think a quadriplegic, they must not, they need help 24/7. Actually, one of our team members, he is an ambassador. His name is Tariq Salim, and he invented and he created tools that are available worldwide in Egypt. For example, he can put this tool in his hand and then he can type. He's actually a programmer, and he has a quadriplegic, by the way, for a lot of people who don't know. They can't use their fingers. They don't have mobility in their fingers, for example. So he created a little tool that he can type with, and now he can do his job. He works in one of the biggest telecom companies now, and he's been promoted since he was hired. So we have a lot of examples like Tariq, who all you need is little accommodations or tools that would help you implement your work.
So that's the kind of that's what I'm getting at there. It's important, I think, for people to see the literal differences that it makes to people's lives, and the kind of thing that the way that lives can be changed by just making other people making just little changes.
Very little changes. Like, medicine, the little medicine boxes. So instead of persons who are blind, or any product, by the way, a shampoo, can you imagine someone blind wanting to know which shampoo to use or which is the conditioner? Basically, all you need is to have engraved on the bottle, like the braille little elevated dots that would tell them which product it is.
Or it's hardly a big thing for a company to do, is it?
No, it's very easy.
It's just the awareness of it.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, where would the world be without people like Stephen Hawking, for example, who they made it a simple tool, simple accommodations, and those tools allowed him to share some of the most amazing thoughts with the world. So how many Stephen Hawkings do we have here in Egypt that are undiscovered? Because we've not yet enabled them the way Helm is trying to do to be able to share all their genius.
So, Amena, do you have to go and shout at people a lot? Do you have to go to companies and come on, get your finger out, do something about this?
Can I actually be really honest? And honestly, I have to admit, since we popped up in the market, we have been getting far too many requests. Everybody thought we were crazy when we started our Intaliq project with the foundation of a very big telecom company. It's an app for people with disabilities to find locations that are accessible to them. All the other people kept telling us, "You're crazy. Which company is going to pay money to make their place more accessible?" Actually, more than 150 companies did. A lot of factories of really big companies actually invested millions to make their premises more accessible.
That's
and we
amazing.
have over 1,000 places on our app. So I think there is a lot of people, when you give them the knowledge or the awareness and the tools, it makes it a lot easier to make the decision. But when you don't know, how can you do it?
Yes, of course. How if you're not aware, if you don't have the understanding, and then of course the means, then how can you? And that's what you guys do, which is, I think, just fabulous work. Really great.
It's good that people are actually taking you up on this and actually to doing it. We're going to come back in just a few moments. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to play some Sam Smith, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about where the Helm Foundation story is going, and what else is happening, and perhaps even how you can get involved too. That's coming up next. Here with one of the founders of the Helm Foundation, Amena El Saie, who is with us to talk about their work for persons with disability all across Egypt, and they have some wonderful initiatives. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you, Amena, for being with us. Now, tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing for places like the Luxor touristic areas. You're doing a lot of work there as well to make them more accessible. Is that correct?
Yes, that's our main. This is our upcoming project. We are currently in the process of working on making accessibility models in Luxor, and I think this is going to be really big because, as I said, there's 1 billion people with disabilities in the world, and we are mainly focused on tourism. So also in Egypt, it's very important to focus on tourism because that could not just be a good value for persons with disabilities locally for jobs, but also internationally to get a really good economic perspective for Egypt.
Because if you're living with someone or caring for someone who has a disability, the first thing you're going to do if you want to take them on holiday is to check out all those things. Is this a country that's looking after people with disabilities? Is it making sure that touristic hotspots have this kind of access? And at the moment, it's difficult enough for anybody to get around, I guess.
Yes. So basically, we are building up on the project that we did in Giza with the governor, and now we're working with the governor and the Ministry of Tourism in Luxor with a really big telecom company sponsoring the project and partnering with us. So basically, what we're aiming for is to also show how it can be done and replicated. So that's the main point. As one of our advisors who works with us, Jay Cardinale, who's the Walt Disney Accessibility Manager, he once said, if grandma doesn't go on a holiday with the family, all the family stays home. You can't just leave grandma behind. So that's the kind of market value that we're capitalizing on. Just not persons with disabilities only, but also elderly, mothers with strollers, all people with different needs.
Well, just on that point, Imo on Twitter talks about getting around Cairo and going to malls and with a baby stroller, and that being difficult enough. And is saying, imagine having a wheelchair to get around. How are you working with places like that, like the sort of retail industry here in Cairo?
That's actually what we mainly do with the Helm consultancy, because we help businesses. We send our professional team to provide a report of accessibility measures, what is wrong, what needs to be changed, how to change it, and how much it would cost. So we basically make all the hard work for them. All they have to do is decide on the priorities, what they want to start with, and then they would make the amendments. And actually, we got a lot of malls who made changes, a lot of shops, and even the very small scale shops, they actually do it for a good deed. So they feel that, we should do it not just because of the profit, but just to do something good. So it has been very, very, very interesting because we did over, I think, almost 150 places by now who actually implemented changes in 1.5 years. And some of them are really big places. And we are also aiming to create like a whole area. So this is why we're focusing, for example, in Luxor. We're working with shops, with the governor for streets to become accessible, with El Karnak Temple. We're working on El Karnak and Luxor Temple and the museum to make accessibility changes and to make them more accessible for everyone.
Well, what I absolutely love about the Helm Foundation, everything that you've been saying is it is very practical. You have some very, very practical information and advice and tools for people to implement in their companies and in just in everyday life. So it's not just like a charity thing where people just go, oh, ya haram, which is
exactly.
Some people respond that way. Do you know what I mean? So what do you want? You don't just want, oh, ya haram, do you? You don't want that to be the response.
No, we want people to understand the market value and the benefits that and the opportunity that a business can have, and that a country could have by ensuring that all buildings, all streets are built from the very beginning and designed in a way that is accessible. So we are trying to focus on fixing the root cause of the problems that eventually turn into big, expensive problems. So we try to fix it from the very beginning.
From the get-go.
Exactly. So we're trying to put guidelines. We studied a lot of guidelines. We have been very lucky to win global awards and to be trained in Japan by the Japanese government. 3 of our team members are trained there to learn how to design design accessible cities, and we learned in the US and many other countries who have very good accessibility standards. And we're trying to bring all of that and create some kind of, and this is the focus of Helm Foundation in the coming period, is accessibility. In the meantime, we're also focusing on making models of persons with disabilities, and we're launching our academy this year. So that's our next big project. As I said, we have been able to train a lot of persons with disabilities and therefore get hired in multinational companies. But it's not really about millions of people at the moment for us. It's mainly about hundreds of people who are really qualified, would become ambassadors in companies. So that really worked well. One of the companies that worked with us, for example, when they joined our community day and saw our team members work and saw a lot of people with disabilities work effectively, and because our team is half persons with disabilities, as volunteers, as a team, and as team members. And volunteers, yeah. So basically what happened is that in one case, the HR director went up on stage and said, this person, Mohammed Sobhi, was going to be hired in a certain position, and they said, he's incredible. We want him as in the sales and marketing team. And he got promoted in less than 2 months. He was incredible. So, and still is. He now manages over 50 something employees.
That's fantastic, you see. Yeah. That's the kind of difference that you can make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. And just in a few short years as well.
Yeah, because it's very empowering as well to persons with disability. I mean, it obviously helps people get around. But then again, you also, if you are someone who lives with a disability, you feel seen. You feel like you are an important contributor to society and that you've got something to offer. And I think that in turn is something that society can definitely benefit from, you know, and that's what's beautiful about it.
We're trying to, the way we work, I mean, is not we're serving them versus everybody's working together. Persons with disabilities have a role. So we're not giving them like a gold spoon, because life is not like that, right? Yeah. You know, you can't just get everything. We in our training programs, we're very strict. We're very mean sometimes. Not mean, but not bad. But you know, we
horrible people.
Yeah,
horrible people.
We mimic real life. You know, we give them a scenario and a real life experience of how a job would be like.
You prepare them
exactly. So that's actually one of the main reasons why a lot of people with disabilities don't hold a job after they get it, because they have all these expectations of how that they're going to have extra benefits that they don't need, right? Because no, we will give you accommodations that you have to have, but then you have to work as hard as everybody else as long as you can, you know? So this is what we prepare people for work for, and then we help companies find these right people so that eventually we have this whole model of companies having this aha moment of saying, okay, if we invest in persons with disabilities, that's what we get, you know, people who are effective.
Okay, well, it'd be nice to... We'll come back one more time and we'll talk about some future plans and how people can get involved as well.
Yeah.
It's lovely to talk to you, Amena. Thank you very much for being on the programme today.
Thank you.
We'll come back from the Helm Foundation, doing great work for persons with disabilities across Egypt. Hey, good morning. It's Mark and Sally, Monday's morning show. We're very happy to have with us Amena this morning, who is here from the Helm Foundation, which helps persons with disabilities. And we've been chatting this morning, and we've got some messages coming in this morning.
Yeah, hello to Supermom, who says, I'm so happy listening to your talk about making life more accessible in Egypt. I'm a mum of a child with cerebral palsy who is 13 now and can really relate to the struggles of maneuvering her wheelchair around the streets of Cairo. I saw the campaign for Helm and I was so impressed because it was very, very good. And
it wasn't the usual tacky material that makes people want to cry. It was realistic and conveyed the message in a dignified way.
Yes.
Which I thought was a lovely message about the work that you guys are doing, Amena. Another one here, question for you. Hey, Amena, please work on having gender-neutral bathrooms for people with disabilities, as sometimes they need help in there. My mother and I have a very hard time taking my little brother to the bathroom. He's 14 and has cerebral palsy, and we find it hell finding a bathroom that we can take him to.
That is a very, very valid request, because this is exactly what I was hoping for, people to to state what they feel. And I would recommend that everybody who has a need, we need your support to show everybody and different stakeholders what exactly is the need, because people would think that's a disability bathroom is enough. That is actually a very good point that maybe we do not focus on when we recommend to companies or retail stores to have unisex bathrooms. So I think this is something we should put into consideration. So thank you for pointing that out. And we would definitely use your request to push for it.
Well, that's great to hear. It's great to hear that, obviously there is that dialogue. It's not, you just you are taking on board feedback as you go along and trying to make things more accessible. We also have another message that came through here, though. It's a bit of a reality check as well. It says, just a thought. It isn't as rosy as you, Amena, are you making it sound? Companies do not hire people with disabilities. The percentage is like 1%, even if you train and empower those with disabilities. And to say that they need training, even if you do, and they are the best people, I just cannot beat people's perceptions in my employability yet. Maybe in day-to-day, but not in the workplace. Now, I don't know who that's from, but it sounds like someone who is struggling themselves in the marketplace.
Yes.
So what would you have to say to that?
I would say that, the correct percentage by law is 5%. But what happens is, I do agree with you that there is a lot of struggle to find the right job. But that happens because there's a multiple, very complex problem that, touches both ends. First of all, persons with disabilities, all we're asking for is to have an equal opportunity to fight for the job they want, to get into school. We're not asking for a special bus. We want everybody to have the opportunity to be crammed up in the microbus or in the bus or the metro station. That's all we're asking, just to be having this opportunity to be like everybody else. So that's one problem: how to get to the job and how to get to school. So how do we expect a lot of persons with disabilities to compete in the job market if they don't have a good enough opportunity for education? Most schools are not accessible, and this is actually one of the biggest problems that we have to have a solution for. Schools must accept persons with disabilities, and they must be built in a way that is accessible, because it impacts everybody with a disability. And most private schools, we get a lot of complaints about private schools kicking out students with disabilities or refusing them because they say we do not have the accommodations to accept your child. So
it's it's a cop-out as well, isn't it?
Exactly. So you have to have a lot of money or a lot of determination, because we have a lot of team members with disabilities, and that's a message to everybody with a disability out there. Yes, it's hard, and yes, we're trying to work to solve it, but in the meantime, fight for it. I mean, persons with disabilities, we have a lot of success stories at Helm, and everywhere around Egypt, many governorates who, for example, we have this one amazing girl who used to wear 2 jeans on top of each other because she had her dad used to carry her every day to her classroom 3 stories up in the school, and eventually she used to wear 2 jeans and she would crawl up on the stairs to get to her classroom. She would leave her wheelchair and she would crawl to her class. That's how much she wanted education. So it's not easy. I'm not saying it's not human. I know that, but I mean, in the meantime, we need to do something until we can fix the situation from the core.
There's a lot of that. There's no point in everybody saying, well, it's never going to get any better. Nothing's going to change, so everybody does nothing, and everybody has to do like a little something, and even if it's just small changes. Very, very gradually, at least we're getting somewhere, if not getting all the way quickly.
Exactly. And the other side is the company. I mean, I would recommend that every company, a lot of things could be easily done. It's sometimes the not knowing what to do causes people assume that it's going to be so expensive and so difficult. But we're asking every single company, HR, marketing, whatever your job is, whoever's listening, you can actually push for your company to become more accessible. Yeah. So when somebody fits for the job...
We have so many people listening who work in HR, don't we, Sally?
Yes, we do.
They're always listening. the human resources people, they're always listening every morning. So what do you want to say to those people?
We want to tell them that we have a full solution for you to help you, and we work with over 200 companies, and that's why we founded the social enterprise, because you asked for help, and we're here, and we can give you simple solutions that would be based on your specific needs. You don't have to do everything at one point. You just have to start somewhere.
Right.
You know, we help you bring everybody on board in your company.
So it starts with a desire to want to be inclusive, to make a change, and then, you know, that gradual, just movement towards a better, more accessible life and workplace for persons living with disability. I mean,
Yes.
it's amazing. It is great. If people want to get involved, how do they do that?
Please send us a Facebook message. I think that's the easiest way.
How do we find you? How do we find you on Facebook?
Helm Egypt. One
Helm
word.
Egypt.
Helm, HELM.
And that's where you are on Twitter as well, right?
Yes. And just send us a message. If you want to volunteer, we'll send you a form, or there's an available form online. And you can also, if you're a company, you can get connected. We can help you. And if you want to support with training your employees, do anything with accessibility or employment with people with disabilities, we can help you. And if you're a person with a disability, you can register on our network, so we can send you our opportunities, or if there's any trainings or any opportunity for you.
That's amazing.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you on and to tell us all about this. And we've learned a lot. I think everybody listening has learned a lot this morning. Amena, thank you very much. And we wish you the best of luck. Do come back, and we hope you're going to have more success stories to tell us in the next coming months and years.
Thank you, NileFM.
Thank you so much for being with us. We hope that the Helm Foundation can help, you know, all of our Egyptian Stephen Hawkings and Frida Kahlos and, you know, all those people, those kind of people that we have here in the society come to light and just shine. That's what we're hoping for.
Absolutely. And you can see all the details on our Facebook page and on nilefm.com as well.